His attitude, personality, and character shone through every lyric.
For nearly a year, Tricia Lucus stayed silent. Her husband, Toby Keith, died in February 2024, and she disappeared from public view. Then, at his Hall of Fame ceremony, she finally spoke. What she revealed shocked everyone in the room. She talked for over 16 minutes about secrets no one knew. She shared details about their marriage that left people stunned. She even read from a napkin he wrote during chemo treatments. But the most shocking part was what she said about his final months. This wasn't the story anyone expected to hear. Toby Keith Koval was born on July 8, 1961, in Clinton, Oklahoma. His dad, Hubert, worked on oil rigs and had served in the military. His mom, Carolyn, once dreamed of being a singer. They didn't have much, but they had heart. When Toby was still a kid, the family moved to Fort Smith, Arkansas, then later settled in Moore, a small town near Oklahoma City. His dad's oil job paid the bills during the 1970s, a time when oil was booming. Life was tough but steady. Toby had a sister and a brother, and they grew up in a working-class home that taught them the value of hard work. One of the biggest influences in Toby's life was his grandmother, Hilda. She ran a supper club in Fort Smith, where live country music played almost every night. Toby spent his summers there helping out and falling in love with music. When he was just 8, his grandma gave him his first guitar. He used to watch the bands and even got up to play with them sometimes. That little stage inside her honky-tonk felt like home. Later in life, he even named one of his albums after her club. It was those nights at the supper club that lit the fire in him to become a musician. But life didn't stay easy. In 1982, when Toby was just 21, the oil industry in Oklahoma crashed hard. Thousands lost their jobs, including his dad. The money stopped coming in. It shook their whole world. Toby, still a teenager, had to take whatever jobs he could find. He worked in grocery stores, helped at rodeos, anything that paid. His dad eventually gave up trying to find oil work. That crash changed Toby forever. It made him tougher. It made him hustle. And it pushed him even deeper into music. Back in high school, Toby had been a football player. He played as a defensive end, but then an injury ended his dream. So he turned to his guitar. At 20 years old, while still working the oil fields, he started a band called Easy Money. They played in small bars across Oklahoma and Texas. It wasn't glamorous. Some nights he had to run off stage in the middle of a song when his oil rig pager went off. He was living two lives, oil by day, country music by night. When Toby graduated high school in 1979, he went straight into oil field work. At just 18, he was making around $50,000 a year, which was huge back then, but it was dangerous. One wrong move and you could fall, get crushed, or even die in an explosion. He worked 12-hour shifts under the blazing Oklahoma sun, handling heavy equipment. It was brutal, but the money kept him going. At night, he'd change out of his oil-stained clothes and hit the stage with his band. They only made about $35 per gig, split between them. Sometimes Toby took home just $10. The bars were rough. Fights broke out often, chairs flew, bottles smashed. But he kept singing, learning how to win over any crowd. Those nights taught him how to be a performer, no matter the chaos. When the oil industry crashed in 1982, his $50,000 paycheck disappeared. With no steady job, he had no choice but to go all in on music. He started playing over 200 shows a year, driving from town to town, often sleeping in a van. He played for tiny crowds in dusty dive bars. Some gigs paid just enough for gas, but he didn't quit. Music was all he had left. Then came the lowest point of his life. In 1984, He used all the money he had to make a demo tape. He took it to Nashville, hoping for a break. But the record labels didn't want him. One executive at Capitol Records barely even listened before telling him the songs weren't good enough. Around the same time, a promoter scammed his band out of $10,000. Toby was crushed. He felt like a failure. His savings were gone. His hope was nearly gone too. He thought about quitting music altogether, but he didn't. He found a small garage studio and started recording his own songs again, mixing classic country with a bit of rock. Nobody wanted it. Nashville didn't believe in his style. But then, something unexpected happened. A flight attendant who liked his music gave his demo to Harold Shedd, a record producer who had worked with big names. Shedd almost ignored it too, but when he heard Toby play live, he changed his mind. He offered him a small deal for $20,000. Toby's big break finally came in 1993. He released his first album, and on April 20th of that year, his song "Should Have Been a Cowboy" hit the radio. The song wasn't written in a fancy studio. It was written in a motel bathroom in Dodge City, Kansas, after a hunting trip with friends. A guy named John got rejected by a cowgirl, and one of Toby's buddies joked, "You should have been a cowboy." Toby grabbed his guitar, sat on the edge of the tub, and wrote the whole thing in 20 minutes. That song became the most played country hit of the entire 1990s. That debut album was a shock to Nashville. It went platinum, over 1 million copies sold, and almost every song on it was written by Toby himself. That kind of success was rare for a newcomer, especially one who had no connections and had nearly given up. 4 of the songs became major hits, with "Should Have Been a Cowboy" reaching #1, and others climbing near the top of the charts. But his fight wasn't over. His record label wanted to change him. They wanted him in fancy suits, singing pop country. They even offered him millions to change his style. But he refused. He told them, "I'm going to go down with my own ship." He risked everything again, but he couldn't pretend to be someone else. Eventually, he found a producer named James Stroud, who let him record what he wanted. That decision saved his career again. Toby hit the road hard. He opened for stars like Shania Twain. He played festivals. He shook hands, signed autographs, and made sure everyone remembered his name. Toby Keith's life changed forever in 1994. Just 2 years after his first single came out, he released an album called Boomtown on September 27th. That album didn't just sell well, it exploded. Over 1 million people bought it in the United States, and it went platinum. Songs like "Who's That Man" hit #1, and "You Ain't Much Fun" climbed to #2. Upstairs Downtown made it to #10, and Big Old Truck reached #15. Fans were shocked by how fast he rose from working in the oil fields to filling 20,000-seat arenas across Texas. People saw themselves in him. He wasn't pretending. He sang about real life, and you could feel it in every word. In Nashville, he worked with great musicians like Sonny Garish and Reggie Young. That's what gave his songs a rich, deep sound that stayed true to his country roots. But in 1996, Toby took a big risk. His third album, Blue Moon, came out on April 16th. It had a different tone. One of the songs, "Me Too," was soft and emotional. It reached #1, but it also caused trouble with his record label. They didn't think his tough image could survive something so vulnerable. During that time, Toby was passed between 3 different record labels. First Polydor, then A&M, then Mercury. He was only with A&M for 15 weeks. The music industry was in chaos around him, but the album still went platinum and sold over 1 million copies. Does That Blue Moon Ever Shine on You? Reached #2, and A Woman's Touch hit #6. It was a strange time, but Toby pushed through. Then, in 1999, something incredible happened. Toby signed with DreamWorks Records. His career had slowed down, and some people thought it might be over. But on November 2nd, he released How Do You Like Me Now? At first, radio stations didn't want to play the song. But then something wild happened. It slowly climbed the charts, and by March 2000, it stayed at #1 for 5 weeks. It didn't just top country charts, it crossed over to the Billboard Hot 100, hitting number 31. It became the biggest country hit of 2000. After Toby passed away in February 2024, the song came back on the charts again at number 23. That's how much it meant to people. In that same late 1990s period, Toby became a chart machine. By 1999, he had already sold over 5 million albums. All 4 of his first albums had gone gold or better. He was known as country music's bad boy, but he was also smart. In 2005, he started his own label called Show Dog Nashville. His first breakout song, Should Have Been a Cowboy, had already become one of the most played songs of the 1990s. From 1993 to 1999, it was like everything he touched turned to gold. His fans didn't just like him, they believed in him. In 2001, Toby shocked everyone again. He released an album called Pull My Chain, and it had a song that sounded like nothing else in country music. I Want to Talk About Me wasn't just catchy, it was different. Some people called it country rap. It was actually meant for Blake Shelton, but his label turned it down. Toby recorded it anyway. It hit #1 on November 24th. Some critics didn't like it. One even called it the weakest song on the album. But Toby didn't care. He said it straight. "They're gonna call it a rap," he told Billboard, "but there ain't nobody doing rap who would call it a rap." The fans loved it, and that's what mattered. In 2002, after the attacks on 9/11, Toby wrote a song that set off a national firestorm. It was called Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue. He didn't hold back. The line, "We'll put a boot in your ass, it's the American way," made headlines. It hit #1 by July 20th and reached number 25 on the Billboard Hot 100. The Chicks singer Natalie Maines called the song ignorant. Toby didn't stay quiet. He clapped back and even used a fake photo of her with Saddam Hussein during his concerts. The feud got so intense that in 2003, she wore a shirt that said "Few TK." She later admitted it meant "Fu You Toby Keith." But the song kept growing. By 2023, it had been certified 4X Platinum. That same year, in 2003, Toby released Shockin' Y'all. It became one of the top-selling albums of the year with 2.3 million copies sold. One of the songs, American Soldier, became an anthem for troops during the Iraq War. Toby started performing at military bases, but not everyone supported him. He began receiving death threats because of his stance. Still, he didn't stop. He performed more than 200 USO shows and traveled to Iraq and Afghanistan 8 times each. He sang for the soldiers even when it was dangerous. In 2003, he also had a very public fight with ABC's Peter Jennings. Toby was supposed to sing Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue on a July 4th special, but Jennings didn't want the angry tone of the song on the show. Toby refused to change the lyrics, so ABC cut him from the event. When asked, Toby joked, "Isn't he Canadian?" and said Dan rather wouldn't have kicked him off. After that, Toby boycotted ABC for years. In 2005, Toby released Honky Tonk University. It had the hit As Good As I Once Was, which became another #1. But behind the music was something much bigger. That same year, Toby quietly donated $1 million to victims of the Oklahoma tornado. He never talked about it publicly. People only found out years later. He was always giving back, but he didn't want credit for it. At the same time, he kept releasing hit songs that made people laugh, cry, and think. Also in 2005, Toby started Show Dog Records with Scott Borchetta. But by 2006, Scott left and started Big Machine Records. That label became huge, signing people like Taylor Swift. Show Dog never reached that level. In 2009, Toby merged his label with Universal South, but by 2017, the company was falling apart. Most of the artists left. In the end, only Toby and his daughter Crystal were still signed. Toby's love story with Tricia Lucus started long before all the fame. They met in a club when he was still working in the oil fields. They got married on March 24, 1984. Tricia believed in him when everyone else told her he should get a real job. In 2001, tragedy struck. Toby's father died in a car crash on the same date, March 24th. That day became both a celebration and a heartbreak. They stayed married for 39 years, right up until his death in 2024. Toby had 3 kids. Shelley was born in 1980 and was adopted by Toby. Crystal came in 1985. Steelen was born in 1997. On July 4, 2017, Crystal and her family were in a terrible car crash caused by a drunk driver. Their car was crushed. She shared photos online and said a drunk driver almost killed her whole family. Thankfully, they all survived. Toby also opened restaurants called I Love This Bar and Grill, named after his hit song. The chain grew fast, but by the 2010s, everything started falling apart. In 2014, one location owed nearly $190,000 in unpaid taxes. The franchise holder, Frank Capri, turned out to be a former mobster. Lawsuits followed, and by 2020, most of the restaurants were gone. Only 2 stayed open by 2024. Toby Keith was right in the middle of a touring high in fall 2021 when something inside him didn't feel right. His stomach was burning so badly he started skipping meals. He thought it was just stress from the road. But when doctors checked him in October, they found a tumor the size of a plum sitting against his stomach wall. He didn't tell anyone yet, not even fans. By Thanksgiving, he was already going through surgery, chemo, and radiation. And still, he pushed on with 17 more concerts before quietly breaking the news on Instagram in June 2022 with just 5 words. So far, so good. But things weren't good. His cancer had spread to his lymph nodes. That cut his chances of surviving 5 years to less than 30%. He printed that number out and pinned it on his studio wall. It became the thing that kept him moving. He told himself he had to finish 2 songs before the year ended. And he did. His wife, Tricia Lucus, didn't waste a second. She had been with Toby for 40 years, and within 2 days of his diagnosis, she became his lifeline. She read through hundreds of medical research papers, found 9 promising trials, and somehow convinced a top hospital in Houston to let Toby in on a special program. That's where he started getting a new kind of treatment every 3 weeks, starting February 7, 2022. She even taped a color-coded chart over his hospital bed, tracking everything from his medicine to his song ideas. The nurses started calling her Sergeant Mom, and they meant it as the highest compliment. Her fierce dedication paid off. By May 2023, the tumor had shrunk by 1/3. The doctors said the experimental treatment was working. Toby later joked that if the gold at Fort Knox ever got sick, Tricia could run the place. But the cancer took a toll. Toby, who once stood strong at 6'3" and weighed 240 pounds, dropped to 140. In photos from a golf outing in June 2023, he looked like a shadow of his old self. He could barely eat 900 calories a day. He called it country fried fasting, with a half smile. Breathing became so hard that he had to relearn how to do it before he could sing again. But still, on August 15th, with oxygen tubes behind his ears, he recorded a single raw demo of Don't Let the Old Man In. The sound of his voice shaking hit something deep in everyone who heard it. Producers at NBC booked him to sing at the first People's Choice Country Awards. On September 28, 2023, he held onto the mic stand like it was holding him up. But he made it through the song. At the end, he held the final note for 18 seconds and stood still while the audience clapped for 42. Toby wasn't done. Even when doctors begged him to rest, he booked 2 concerts in Las Vegas for December 10th and 11th. It had been 977 days since he last played a full set. Behind the scenes, medics had a cot ready in case he needed to lie down between songs. On the second night, he didn't even use his stool. He stood and played for 100 minutes. When he closed with "Should Have Been a Cowboy," it was 10:41 p.m. People watching later said he only sat down for 28 minutes total that night. And just before he left the stage, he whispered, "I'm riding shotgun, Almighty." While he was fighting to stay alive, Toby still oversaw the release of a new album. He called it 100% Songwriter and made sure it came out on November 3rd, 2023, exactly 30 years and 1 day after his first #1 hit. It sold 24,000 copies the first week, but the real story happened quietly. Toby gave all the money, along with a 6-figure personal check, to his OK Kids Corral in Oklahoma City, a free lodge for families of children with cancer. He didn't want any press release. The staff only found out when the books showed a mysterious $784,200 deposit on December 31st. That year, the corral housed 421 families and added a teen game room. The plaque on the door simply says, "Built with love, Big Dog Daddy." Toby passed away at home in Owasso, Oklahoma, on February 5, 2024, at 10:24 p.m. It had been exactly 1,008 days since he first told the world about his cancer. The tubes were gone, and the last song playing outside his room was "Should Have Been a Cowboy." A nurse wrote that his heart stopped as the final chorus faded. His family released the news just over an hour later, and within 6 hours the post was read over 12 million times. His death certificate was filed on February 7th and listed gastric adenocarcinoma as the cause. That week, 162 flower arrangements shaped like red solo cups were delivered to the private funeral, one for every show he'd done since getting sick. He almost didn't make it into the Country Music Hall of Fame. The rules say nominees have to be alive when voting ends. Luckily, voting closed on January 31st, 2024, just 5 days before Toby died. The announcement came too late for him to hear it, but on March 18th, when the news was shared with the world, the video hit 2.3 million views in a single day. The October 20th, 2024 ceremony will display Toby's beloved guitar, Clara, and an unreleased version of Beer for My Horses. Museum staff say they expect a huge jump in visitors, just like what happened after Patsy Cline passed in 1973. At the Candlelight Memorial on February 13th, his daughter Crystal did something no one expected. Instead of singing one of her own songs, she sang Tim McGraw's "Don't Take the Girl," her dad's favorite song by someone else. Her voice cracked on the bridge, and the video went viral, getting 47 million loops on TikTok. That night, his son Steelen posted something that shocked fans. He had inherited Toby's 160-acre ranch in Moore, Oklahoma, the same one from the American Soldier video, and he planned to turn it into a retreat for kids fighting cancer. His post got 1.2 million likes. In the foyer of the ranch now hangs a chalk drawing from the grandkids. It shows Pop Pop with a red cup halo, right next to his first platinum plaque. On October 20th, 2024, Tricia finally spoke in public. It was at the Hall of Fame ceremony. Her speech lasted over 16 minutes, longer than the musical tribute that night. She held up Toby's bronze medallion and said, "There will never be another Toby Keith." And the whole room stood up. She told the crowd they had been together for 43 years, 6 months, and 27 days. She shared how, on their wedding day in March 1984, Toby called from the oil field with a cut hand and said he'd marry her one-handed if he had to. She ended her speech by reading from a napkin Toby had written on during chemo. It said, "You keep the torch lit. I'll keep the wind at your back." The napkin, stained with tears, is now framed outside the hall's rotunda. She even told the story of how he proposed. It happened after a bar fight at the Dusty Dog Saloon in Tulsa on July 14, 1983. Someone insulted Toby's band, and he got arrested for throwing the first punch. Lucus bailed him out around 3:15 a.m. While she was signing the papers, Toby pulled out a small diamond chip he'd bought with his last $100 and asked her to marry him. She said yes right there in the jail lobby. The ring cost nearly half his yearly salary. He kept the bail receipt stub in his guitar case for the rest of his life. Since his passing, Tricia says she can't go to the grocery store without crying. She keeps track of every fan who comes up to her in a notebook labeled TK Angels. So far, it's happened 312 times. She hugs each one and tells them to cry for 1 minute. On May 14, 2024, a 9-year-old boy thanked her for funding his cancer treatment, and she cried for 3 full minutes in the cereal aisle. Doctors later asked to study her way of grieving, but she refused. She said it belongs to the people who miss Toby, not to science. She also shared numbers that left the crowd in awe. Toby's foundation gave out $16.3 million in medical grants since 2006, served 11,680 free meals a year, and supported 261 concerts for U.S. troops overseas, making him the most deployed performer of his time. When he died, 25% of his music royalties were automatically set aside to fund the OK Kids Chorale forever. His son read a note Toby had written, "Make the beds tight, the kids laugh loud, and the flag fly high." In the week after Toby's death, his song "Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue" shot up 742% in streaming. Experts say his endowment will fund the chorale at least until the year 2075. Even when doctors wanted to stop treatment in November 2023, Tricia didn't. She got him into a last-minute trial in Miami. Toby gained 4 pounds and managed one last surprise 3-song set in Las Vegas on December 10th. Medical notes released after his death say her careful planning gave him 4.3 more months. Months he used to record 12 unreleased songs. They'll be released in a new album in 2026.